Hi everyone. All right, we are ready for step number 5, which is the last step, the carving step. So actually using our tools and carving away and creating our design onto our project. Okay, so far you have completed your project. You have all of your layers of slip, 3 solid layers. It's still leather hard, a little bit past leather hard, again, would be good so that you don't have any squishy areas and it's not fluxing around, okay? But it also still is dark in color. So if you seem to have anywhere in your project that is starting to turn lighter in color, that means that it's getting too dry and you don't want to be working with it. So you would want to mist it, let the water absorb, and then continue. So a little bit past leather hard, and now we're ready to carve. So we've had our design transferred onto the surface. So you took your template and you followed the steps from last step, transferred your design onto the surface, and now we're ready to carve away any kind of outline, edge, anything that you want carved away. All right, so for this step, you're going to want to use our modified loop tool. This was the staple and the pencil. If you don't have this ready, take a break right now. Go watch the tutorial that is posted on how to create this tool. You will absolutely need it. You do not want to just use a pencil, a toothpick, or anything. That's not actually going to remove the layer of slip. That's just pushing it down and creating an imprint, and it won't look very clean. So we need to use our loop tool to actually scoop away that top layer, okay? And the smaller one is important versus the larger one. Obviously, this is going to be large. You won't be able to get into the detail areas, but also because of the thicker wire, it doesn't tend to remove it very cleanly. It tends to smear a little bit. So you want to use that thin wire staple. All right. So what we want to do is we want to think about what areas are we actually carving. So you have some options. So one option is maybe you're simply just carving away the actual line that you traced. So you just want an outline. If you're doing that, you're going to want to carve exactly on top of the line that you traced. If you want to carve away the inside area, so you want to leave the background brown and you want to scoop away the entire inside area, so it's, a reverse silhouette from what we see here, white tree, white moose, brown background. Then what you would want to do is you would want to lay your tool slightly on the inside of the line. So not on the line, but inside of the line, so that you don't actually scoop away too much. All right. And then obviously vice versa. If you wanted to create a white background with brown shapes, then you would simply carve on the outside of the line, okay, and then kind of work your way in. So just giving yourself a little bit of buffer space again, so that all of these small details, areas, you won't accidentally carve away too much, all right, because you can always carve away more, but once you carve that away, it's tricky to get that back. So, all right, so what we want to do is for carving motion, normally what you want is a placement where you're going to take the tool and pull towards yourself, okay? You don't necessarily want to go side to side. You're not pushing up. You want to place the tool on the clay and pull towards yourself. So that means that you might need to rotate your piece several different directions. Just do small amounts at a time, rotate, turn, so that you get a really clean, consistent line. So for the moose back, I would rotate it. I would place my tool on top and I would simply dig in and pull forward. And you can see that it is now removing that layer. And I have these little tiny flakes. They're little like ribbons. That's why we call this a ribbon tool, because when we carve something away, it usually kind of peels off like a ribbon, kind of like you are peeling an apple. Okay, so after you do a little area, you'll notice that you have all of these little flakes sitting on top. Okay, If you're able to just tilt it and they fall off, that's perfect. That means that we have the right consistency. If you're carving and those little flakes are still kind of sticking to the surface of your clay, don't try to wipe them off, right? That's going to smear everything. So if your clay is still kind of sticking, all those little flakes are still sticking to the surface, that means that your project is probably not quite ready to carve. So I would let it take a break, air it out, and so that you can try again later, go back and carve, and then hopefully those flakes will just fall off. If for some reason maybe you are getting a couple stubborn ones, again, don't take your hand and try to wipe. All right, just either let them stay put, and then when they dry out, they'll be able to brush off, or you could use your dry paintbrush and just lightly dust them off. Okay. Then you'll notice that you also will probably have some buildup in your tool. So it's important that every carving you go in and you pick that out. I know it's super fun, but clean that out. So you could either just use your fingers, you could get your paintbrush and dust it out, or even an old toothbrush works really well for kind of scrubbing out little areas. Okay. So you would simply go around and do that to your entire area. So again, rotating um, your project when you need to, and then taking a quick break, getting those flakes out, moving right along. Okay. Now it is important, particularly if you are working with a project that you might need to be laying down on your table, rotating it. Just be cautious about all of these little flakes, right? Because then if we take our project and we roll our project on top of that, it just picked up all of these little flakes, and then you try to wipe them off and it's a big, don't, okay, avoid that. So don't do what I just did. All right, bad, gross, ew. Now all of these bits are stuck in. Okay, so make sure that when you're rotating it, you get clean surface, remove any of the flakes. Please don't just brush them on the floor, you guys. Okay, your parents are gonna kill me. So, all right. So collect it all, bring it over, dump it into the trash. All right, no, we're not saving these little flakes. Okay, so take your time. And then as soon as you've got the outline done, so again, I always go through and I try to do the outline first. And then after I've gotten my outline done and I'm happy with it, then I can go ahead and start carving away. So let's say this time I wanted to carve away the inside. My example was carving away the outside. Let's say I want to carve away the inside this time. So going on the inside, I'm carving inside of my lines. Okay, so inside of my lines, because if I carve on the line, then I might be taking away a little bit too much within some of these details. I want to carve with inside the line so that I can just scoop that away and making sure that I'm leaving that little space available still brown. Okay, so now I can carve inside the line on the other side, pick out those flakes, and now I can just go ahead and start scooping away the rest of the inside. All right, and now I have that little area carved out. Okay, so you would just go around, do the whole outline, making sure that you've got enough spacing, and then when you're ready, you just go ahead and scoop away the whole outline. So once the project starts getting even a little bit more dry, you might be able to get away with using either the side of your staple, a toothpick, your paper clip, or even if you have like a pin at home. Once the clay has dried a little bit more, you could attempt to go in and scratch. Okay, that's technically what Sgraffito is, scratching. So like in painting and oil pastels, etc., you would literally just be scratching, not necessarily carving. So it's the same concept. So if you have areas that maybe you were trying to get a little bit more detail, those would be the very last areas to do. And once the clay is stiffened up a little bit more on the dry side, you could attempt to go in and try to, do some thinner line carvings. But what you need to remember is you're still trying to remove that slip. You're not just taking the clay or taking a tool and pushing down, okay? Because that's just pushing the slip downwards, and it creates a really ugly kind of smudgy appearance. So you still want to make sure that you're scraping and you're lifting up that layer of slip versus just pushing it down and making this, indent carving that won't look very good. Okay, you want to be able to have that contrast of white clay and brown clay versus just an indent that you won't really see after we glaze it. It would just disappear. Okay, so that's our goal, is carve everything away. Okay, so either you're just doing an outline. So if you just want lines, that's fine. If you want to carve away the whole inside of the shape, the whole outside of the shape, so that you've got more of a silhouette looking concept, that is up to you. So it's just up to you how much you want to carve, where you're carving, but just take your time, go nice and slow. Remember to clean out your carving tool, every carving. Pay attention to those little flakes. Don't rub them. Don't try to wipe them with your hand. And keep a really clean surface. All right? And that is our last step. And then you'll have a finished project. Okay, so finished project right here. So she was able to get some pretty small details. I believe she used a pin once her clay kind of stiffened up, and she went in there and kind of scratched at it really, really carefully. Okay, but again, you do want to be careful about working on the surface and rubbing your hand. As you notice, there's several areas here that kind of got rubbed as she placed it on the table, and it kind of rubbed back and forth. Make sure that you're really cautious about that so it doesn't mess up your slip application layer. Okay. At the end, if you feel like, oh my gosh, I totally just chipped a whole area, if your clay is still leather hard or not bone dry at all, you could always mist your project. Don't touch it at all, but mist your project to kind of rehydrate it a little bit and maybe repaint a little bit of new slip in an area where you think that you totally made a boo-boo. You could do that. And then otherwise, the last thing after you do your actual design carving is making sure that edges and everything look defined. So obviously the design edges should be really defined. We don't want them to be scratchy. We want it to look really clean and precise. But perhaps I know a lot of you are deciding to keep, the inside one color, outside one color. So if maybe you had an accidental blob around the lip, you would want to go in there now that it's leather hard, and you can shave off any areas of blobs so that you've got a really clean looking edge. Okay, same thing on the bottom. If you got something on the bottom and you don't want it there, you can go back and shave it off. Okay, and then you can smooth it out. Make sure you have your name on it. So if you have not put your name on your project, put your name on there. And then we'll photograph it, and that is the end of the project. So now that the whole project has been carved leather hard, we have our design, it's been tidied, we've got our name on it. I would still recommend trying to keep them leather hard, still wrapped up in a really clean new bag, even possibly if your old bag had Sgraffito slip on it. You don't want to have any clay dust particles trying to stick or smear on any part of your project. So once you're done, I would still recommend keeping it wrapped up until we can bring them to the school. And again, I will be keeping you guys posted on that. It all depends on our numbers, right? Things are still up in the air. So, but keep it so it doesn't get bone dry. And then when you try to transfer it to the school, something breaks and etc. So it'll just be a little bit stronger if you keep it leather hard and a little bit more resistant to cracking and breaking if something gets bumped. All right. Okay, but that is it. So you can go ahead, make sure you've got your carving tool ready to go, and go ahead and get carving. Go nice and slow. Have fun, you guys.